I think that art matters because it brings beauty into your life. That's it.
So art matters. Art matters to me every day. It's all around us. It could be the picture on the wall. It could be the architecture you see walking down the street. It could be the chair you're sitting in. It can be the graphics on the cereal box that you're eating in the morning. It's all around us every single day. A painting can change your mood, it can change your feeling, it can inspire something else for somebody else. Everything is about art every single day, and people don't realize it. When you go to make a cup of coffee, that was designed by somebody. The dress you put on to go to a fancy dinner, that was designed by somebody. And a lot of the things are, if they aren't art in their own way, which I usually can say they are, or I would usually consider that they are, they're influenced by it. So everything, and all art influences one another. So it's part of your everyday life. And to me, without art, it'd be so boring.
So Dana asked me the question, why does art matter? It's mattered my whole life. I've always been a creative. Grew up as the kid who was always making something, drawing something, going fishing with my friends, but not fishing, but building that dam in the river. There was always something creative going on in my life. And I always contribute art with the term creative. And that's why I'm really thrilled about the symposium that we're doing, because creatives run the world. When you walk into a space, how does it look? How is it lit? What's it smell like? What's it sound like? All of those are touches of creative that adds to the art of the space. I'm in product development. I've made a career out of product development. Am I an artist? I use art every day. I create every day, either through the creation of an idea, the creation of illustrations that communicate an idea, that express a storyline, that create a package, that introduce a marketing theme. All of those are elements of art that have given me a way to survive and create a career over the past almost 40 years. Being able to now express myself through true, well, we won't say true art, but another form of artwork, gives me an outlet. Lori and I, my wife, have a studio and gallery here in Dayton, Ohio. I call it our place at the lake. And I've come up with that terminology because a lot of people in this Midwestern area have a place at the lake. It's a place that they can go to, change their attitude, get refreshed, get rejuvenated, but it costs a lot of money. They have to lease the space, buy a boat, buy fuel, pay for all of those things for a weekend at the lake. I pay for space at a studio and a gallery and art materials and supplies and time. But when I do it, I come back rejuvenated. It's changing the quality of my life. I put all the cares away. I can create expressions that are what I want to do, not what's due on Thursday, and on budget. If it sells, whatever. But it allowed me to create and express something that means something to me. So I guess that's what art matters. So art is creative. Creative can stimulate everyday events. It's all around us. The chair that you're sitting in, the camera that you're holding, the light that you turned on. All of it had something to do with a creative aspect. And that person probably took art history in college, that designed the switch that you just turned on going into the kitchen. It was all elements of years and years of history, creative expression, color, form, texture, lighting. All of that goes into the batter that makes that thing just taste so wonderful. So that's why art matters.
Gary Hinchy again here, GWH, and Dana asked why art matters. Well, art matters to me because art and design is a lifestyle. It's not something you put away. It's not an 8 to 5 job. It is all encompassing in your life. Art is transitional. It changes people's lives. It can change an environment instantaneously. It can be controversial instantaneously. It's art in of itself is just very emotional, and that's how I live my life. I live my life with art, with color, constantly looking for beauty that can present itself in many different ways. And for me, it absolutely is. Art matters. Art is a way of life.
As I said earlier, it's a privilege and a pleasure to be part of Dana Wiley's gallery show, Art Matters. And I want to talk a little bit about how art matters to me. It's interesting. The time that we live in, I really should say all times, because it's not that different, but we are now experiencing a kind of mysterious time, and a time when things are changing. And I think that really enhances the notion that I talked about earlier of wanting to share our stories and become embedded and more clearly part of a community. And I think we tend to view art as a kind of abstraction, something that we don't even understand that clearly. Though when I listen to the artists in this exhibition talking, many of them allude directly to telling personal stories or expressing their love of what they're doing. And when you, as an individual, when you watch them, you can very clearly understand the love of what they're doing, but also their wanting to share. The completion of a work of art is somebody out there getting engaged with your thinking. So it's a conversation. There's a lot of parallel between the written word, the drawn image, the sculpted image, the handprint, the individual wanting to make their mark, and others receiving that mark and trying to understand it. All of the videos, which I encourage you to watch, have that feeling of wanting to share. And to me, that's what really matters about art. What matters is the individual, the collective individuals, the community, and the various processes that we have: language, literature, music, visual art, politics, to use a dirty word. But the poetry of life needs to be a shared community event. And the more we can embrace one another, the better. It's interesting to me that the Contemporary Dayton, previously Dayton Visual Arts Center, has restaged and reframed its annual auction, just taking place a couple of weeks ago. And in the process, they brought together an art fair, again, community artists, just like Dana is doing in this gallery space. And they also lifted up the art heroes within our community. Those companies, organizations, nonprofits, individuals who speak to and support the arts through purchase, for their buildings, through writing in the newspaper and other vehicles, their opinions and encouragement about the arts. And it's so interesting that other organizations, arts organizations in this community are doing something very similar to what Dana Wiley is doing in this exhibition, and also this coming Friday, the symposium that's going to be held in the Hub right next to the Co. and Dana's other space downtown. So that's what really matters to me, and I encourage you all to take part if you possibly can. Thank you.
Hi. The question is, why does art matter? And I guess my response to that question would be, why doesn't art matter enough for it to take a more central role in our lives, in our society? I think it's essential. I think it's an antidote to some of the problems in our world right now, especially surrounding the internet and how that's affecting us. It's actually been shown that it's causing dopamine addiction, and that it is actually changing the chemistry of our brains, so that we're never satisfied. It's the next click, and we're getting another shot of this dopamine. But the problem is that it actually doesn't satisfy us. And it doesn't satisfy us because it's all about us. Every swipe you make with your phone, every click that you touch is being calculated by an algorithm that gives you exactly what you want to see, what you want to hear. It's all about you. There's no challenge to that. It's easy. And we actually, I think, as human beings need to be challenged, need to grow, need to learn. Or we become, I don't know, I think it keeps us from becoming our most authentic selves, because we need things to challenge us to do that. So I think for me, art is like going to another country and speaking to someone from a different culture. It challenges me, it enriches me. It allows me to connect with something that I don't know very well at all. It might be hard. I might have to stay with it longer. I might have to think about it in a different way. I might have to adjust my perspective. Our world doesn't really require that of us so much anymore, and we just kind of get stuck in our own way of being and thinking. So I'm just trying to think about the last piece of art that really, really moved me. It was a film, and it was projected on a wall at the Toledo Museum of Art, and it was huge. I mean, it was a whole wall. And it was a photographer who took a 5-minute video with a really high resolution camera of a New York City street scene. And my husband and I were standing there. It had just been slowed down. So all of these gestures of the people became so profound, like a Michelangelo painting, for all the things that they're doing. These normal days, like picking up a newspaper, or someone will occasionally actually look directly in the camera. And it kind of slowed down so much that you really connect with them. Or a pigeon flies, but the slow motion of it makes it this sort of miraculous event out of this daily life. And I think it moved me so much because it is about this slowing down. Robert Hughes, the art critic, said, art requires of us the long look, for us to be in it, to interact with it, to let it change us, to let us have an influence on it. And I think it's an experience like going out into nature. It takes us outside of ourselves. The world is so much focused right now on the idea that we're constantly on display. It actually just gives us a much needed break from ourselves. I mean, we get sort of sick of ourselves, and going and spending time with art, that really does that for me. So, that's it.
I think this is going to be me talking about why art matters to me. Art matters to me actually from the perspective of I'm nothing more than an enthusiast that has been just taken, kidnapped, captured by the notion of looking at things and having those things be avenues for me to look further into what I'm looking at, that through time, that looking has revealed things about me, to me, things about the culture, the time when these pieces were made. But the root of my enticement came prior to things being called art, but were kind of rooted in the visual depictions of things. So perhaps the caves of Lascaux or Altamar, or some of those beautiful depictions that have been captured of prehistory or Neolithic type art in caves, to me are legitimate images, but I don't necessarily consider that art. And then on the other hand, I had a situation where I had a car accident that removed my ability to have a visual image in my mind, so I can only see what I'm looking at and be engaged in real time. I don't have the convenience of imagining something other than what's in front of me. So with that, art has been, or the term art is a generalization, because I think my quest towards understanding my appreciation towards this visual platform has really been an adventure where I'm looking at why artists that count in the pantheon of history and in contemporary sense, I wanted to find out why they did what they did. What was it about? And I found that there were core elements that created a singularity. Every artist that means something to me that I found have a very focused idea. And that focused idea I thought was so paramount that in 1988, I actually put myself to the task of locking myself into a closed environment, ready to accept. If I didn't come out with a valid idea, I would go back to Madison Avenue and enjoy the life of being a designer on Madison Avenue. Thank goodness to me, I had the opportunity for that experience to produce an event that gave me the validity of a perspective. And that perspective is what I've been investigating from this point on. So it's not just me, it's that I see that there's a cohesion or an affirmation with things that I appreciate, create a standard that I get to apply to my ideas and visions. People call that art, they call me an artist, but I'm more interested in the integrity of what I'm making and have it be an exemplification of my thoughts that are perpetually engaged. So my whole approach towards making a piece has a standard to be achieved. Its standard is, does it represent me as the quality of a human being at a task, thinking, putting those thoughts into action, and then what does that action do? Because for me to make a piece, I have to spend my time away from other things, or accept I'm going to spend my time doing this and it isn't away from something else. And does my attention here reveal the result of the quality that I want to see in myself? Attention, precision when needed, but precision can show delinquency, inaccuracy, autonomy, and no rules. But I'm very attentive to the execution of that delivery. And I think that is a good little summation. Thank you.
Why does art matter? That's really actually a really huge question. And I think in a nutshell, personally, I know why art matters to me. It's how and artists say this all the time. It's how you make sense of the world. It's how you process things. Of course it is. That's why artists do what they do. That is how they process. So that is a part of it. Beyond that, there's community involved in making work, and work also brings community together. I feel like it also is a great way, without being an illustration, and nothing against illustration, but it can talk about certain points of view in very complex and subtle ways, and also not so subtle ways, that many people can read into each piece. So I think it talks about things that are often very difficult or not popular or very personal. One of those kinds, those are the things I feel like personally I'm interested in that. I'm interested in things that aren't talked about, that are uncomfortable. And it's just such a nice, a better term for nice, it's such an effective way to do that, because I feel that art does talk about things in a different, of course, language, a visual language. So it matters a lot.
Art has always been very important in my life. I chose the medium of photography when I was 18, and really in my undergraduate career and my graduate career, and all the jobs I've had in between were really around the field of photography. So I've had this sort of single trajectory, but I've really learned to appreciate all mediums and admire all mediums. I just know how long it takes to become an expert in all of them, so you can sometimes only choose one. But one of the most important aspects to art for my life, and one thing I look or think about when I look at other people's art, is it's a navigation tool for finding your voice. So a poet has this beautiful ability to say things, big ideas through these beautiful selections of words, and a painter can communicate space and color and composition to generate a certain idea, and photography does the same thing. I think I've used art as really a very important tool to think about my own life and work through problems or issues or questions that are sort of overarching elements in my life that I need to work through, and art has just been the vehicle for that.
The question is, why does art matter to me? Art is everything. I kind of live, breathe, sleep art. It defines me, it satisfies me, I'm happy. My children used to say, "Oh, Mom, you're grumpy, please go make some art." It's the making, it's the process. It's the moving through the materials, finding the discoveries, the aha moment, the satisfaction and joy that creating these things have in my heart and my soul. With art, I'm not a happy person. I'm not very constructive. To me, art, if you're created in the image of a creator, then you are a creator. And so we all come to this earth as creators, and then sometimes that gets knocked out of us. But for me, I'm lucky enough to have found that and kept that, and I just love to make stuff. So how does that fit in with culture? We define our cultures and our societies and our countries and our citizenship by its arts, by its humanities, by music and dance and theater and visual arts and poetry and literature. And the first thing that an invading country will do is come in and try to totally destroy the art. Because when you destroy the art, you destroy the people, you destroy their spirit, you destroy their souls. So art is extremely, extremely important for those of us who love to make it and for those who love to see it. It hooks us to our humanity and it defines us as human beings. So I think that's why I make art. I make art because I'm compelled. I need to make art. I need to create. And I'm very blessed to have found that.
Art matters because without it, it would be like taking away the air that we breathe. We wouldn't notice that we missed it until it was gone. If you look around your environment, you're going to find there's art everywhere in some form or fashion. It's a very important part of our existence, a very important part of our day-to-day life. We use art for a number of different reasons. Art serves a number of different purposes. It can bring us joy, it can bring us pleasure, it can antagonize us, it can provoke us, it can preserve our existence, it preserves our history. It has a lot of functional aspects as well. Most things that are manufactured or made by humans are drawn first, so they start as some sort of artistic concept before they come into being. So art is a vital part of our existence. Art has a root word in it, or comes from a root word of put together, so it's associated with things like arithmetic and army and organization, so that's how important it is to our lives.
So art has always been a part of my life, or it seems like it's always been a part of my life. My aunt is an interior designer, my grandpa was an architect. They both love art and painting, and my mom even, although I never saw her do it, I think she decided to stop when she had kids, but she would draw and paint. We found, after she passed away, we found, all these things that she had done, which was cool. So I feel like it's something that has just been an influence in my life from the beginning. I loved to go to museums as a kid. I had this board game that was like an art board game that no one ever wanted to play with me, but I loved it. And it had all of the art from the Chicago Art Museum. And so the one I finally got to go there, and to see all those pieces in person, it was amazing. So yes, I feel like, my family has had this huge influence over me with art and in all forms, and they're all very encouraging too. They were so happy when I told them I was going to go back to school, and I got to tell my grandpa before he passed away, and he was very proud and excited. And I've always just felt this, even from a kid, I would draw and whatever, and I just felt like I had to do it. I don't know, there's something compelling me to keep trying and doing it, and I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad I got the degree at Wright State. I learned so much, and it was amazing, and so I'm really happy that I finally got this experience to, show my work. And my daughter, she loves making stuff too, so it's exciting for her to see my work up on the walls. Maybe one day she'll do the same thing. So I feel like art, it's a connection through my family, and it's a connection to people around the world, to your community, your space around you, and it's important.
So for me, art has always been a part of my life. It started with my parents, and I was surrounded by artwork from the community as well as things that were inherited from family, and so we looked at them. And my parents were really good about taking us to museums, and occasionally we get to go to a local art show. And I never thought of myself as a maker, but we always did. We had freedom to disrupt our bedroom and do things to that room as long as we restored it. That was the rule. You could do whatever you want, but if you left or you were done, you had to put it back and paint it and patch or whatever was needed. So I always appreciated that play. And so when I got to college, I was going to be an anthropologist, and I don't know how many different thoughts I had, I had several degree changes, but by the time I got to Wright State, I was interested in art therapy, and then ended up taking my first painting class, and that was it for me. It wasn't that I couldn't do anything else, it's just that that's all I wanted to do was paint. So from there on in, I constructed everything I did, be it what jobs I had or the times that I worked, so that I always had a certain amount of studio work that happened. And I made the choice after undergraduate I worked for about 3 years before I went to graduate school, because I wasn't sure. I didn't know what it meant. I knew I wasn't going to make any money, but at the same time, I didn't care about that, and that's sort of been my path since. And I'm really lucky to have had the journey that I have, because it's taught me so many things, introduced me to cultures I probably wouldn't have been introduced to before, and gave me adventures I would have never had. So art matters in a big, wholehearted way for me. And coming to the end of my life, I realize how important it is. It should be important for us all.
I think why art matters is such a important question, because, to me, art matters is asking us to consider that there's something bigger than us. And I think art always, there's such entry points no matter what the artwork is, in a different way. It could be very personal, it could be spiritual, it could be intellectual, it could be all of that. It could be trauma-based, it could be joy-based, it could be based upon beauty, it could be based on ugliness, it could be, whatever the entry point is into the art, it matters because it is speaking to our collective humanity. It is talking about the human condition experience in all of its manifestations. And most artists are so individual in their creative practice and what they do that they're speaking in unique, singular voices. It's a joy to be able to walk up onto a work of art and they tell you something. It speaks to you in volumes and in ways that you could not fathom because you had to discover it. And where you are in that moment and engaging with that work of art could be life transforming, life illuminating. And so that's why art matters. It has the tool and the capacity to change the molecular structure of your essence and being. And that is why art matters, and we should always support it. I jokingly have said that if you walk into a place and there's no art on the walls, you should probably walk out, because that is a soulless place. That's a place that's not interested in making you feel like being the best human being you can be. So that's why art totally matters.
All right, so I am part of a group called EPIC. And EPIC has been a bunch of just great people in the world of art and all genres, right? And how we're trying to take our community and re-infuse energy, especially in our Main Street, was the first conversation that we had. And this is sort of what has evolved, is this whole thought that art matters and how does it matter and how will it affect. I always look at the economics because I'm a real estate developer. How does that infuse energy, which usually infuses an increase in pedestrian traffic, which turns into active restaurants, and turns into potentially purchases of art. It's just that synergistic thing that art can do in a very simple, sort of subliminal way. You know, when you put art in a window, when you turn on the lights in an empty lobby, and you've taken forgotten places and breathed energy back into them, you've changed dynamic. A dynamic that becomes the way that we start to infuse, like, okay, how are we going to redevelop this area? And the irony is the artists are first because they see the opportunity, because usually this space is relatively inexpensive. They create their own challenge because they make it so exciting that people start really wanting the space, and before you know it, the artists can't afford that space anymore. But in the sense of how we develop as developers, especially cross street, we infuse art at every level because we know the synergistic elements that it has, the energy that it brings, and the opportunity that it provides for local artists to share their story and share their works. So from our perspective, art matters to us every day. We use it in our world of development, and it really can help a community revitalize in a very cost-effective and very grassroots way.
So the question is, why does art matter? Why is it important, and what is it? So I am an interior designer. I'm also an artistic photographer, but when I think about interior design, art is incredibly important to what I do with my clients, and I'm constantly encouraging them to consider buying local artists and encouraging them to curate a collection of original art. And it doesn't have to be something super expensive. It can be at a lower price point, but I'm encouraging them to look at local artists. And why is that important? Because we're supporting a movement that's so incredibly important to the foundation and the very fiber of our city of Dayton. And we're very fortunate to have such extraordinarily gifted and talented and successful artists living and working right here in this area from all over the world. So for me to bring my clients into a gallery down to Front Street, downtown Dayton, and introduce them to artists so they can see where they're working and how they do their work, it's incredibly rewarding for them to have that experience, and they get an appreciation for the art. And it's important for us to support local artists just for economic development. But you also have to think about what is art. It's more than just visual, it's also performance art. It can be in a piece of furniture. It can be in wallpaper design. You know, as a designer, I'm bringing all kinds of art into the home environment. So I'm thrilled that we can appreciate it in the projects, but also be able to give back to our community by supporting local and